Hello, everyone. Welcome to Centered.Live with real conversations about what grounds us, lifts us, and help us live with purpose, clarity, and compassion. Your hosts are Randy Burgoyne and Paul Malloy, husbands, fathers, teachers, and men of tremendous experience and faith.
Hello again, everybody. Glad to be back.
Absolutely, right? I mean, we enjoy creating these, so we hope that you enjoy watching and listening and feel that there's some value here. And if so, we invite you to share. So tonight, we're going to dive into a topic that might surprise you: how something as everyday, as common as driving can become a practice in patience, mindfulness, and emotional regulation. Sound interesting? I think you're going to find it will be interesting. We're calling this one The Road to Patience: Practicing a Centered Life Behind the Wheel.
So, this is something that I've thought about a lot. Okay. Driving is kind of this strange mix of stress and solitude, and how we drive literally reflects on how we live, right?
Absolutely.
We're using that to
Absolutely.
reflect how where emotions are, which we need to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. So often when we get behind the wheel, it's like something happens. I don't know, Randy, if you remember, because this goes back before we were born, actually.
Wow.
But Disney put out a driving education film with Goofy as the character. Do you remember this? Have you seen this?
Yes, I
Do you
have.
remember how he would transform into this raging demon thing as he was in the car behind the wheel, and then he would park and step out and become this mild mannered, right? Goofy again.
Yep. And then they go through giving him a lesson on how to drive,
Right,
right?
right, exactly, exactly. Boy, and when we were talking about this, it's like it brought back so many memories. And to be honest, I will tell you that after I had gone through, well, that's not true. I'm going to have to restate it even before I say it. As I was in college and working towards becoming a pilot in the United States Air Force, I was very much an aggressive driver. I imagined that I was driving like a fighter pilot would fly.
Right. Oh, you had the little license plate that said, "My other car is an F-14," right?
On the dash, it said, "Too close for missiles, switching to guns."
Yeah.
And I will be honest with you, Anne did not like my aggressive driving. And she began to work on me and to temper how I drove with great patience, great suffering, perhaps. And I'll share a little bit more about that as we go along, because I do think it's important that we understand that it truly, how we act is, without any question, a reflection on who we are.
Yeah. And what a better way to help regulate your emotions than do it when you're at your worst, right? And that's
The most challenging, for
the
sure.
most challenging. And I think a big reason of that is we're depersonalized when we're in a car.
Yeah,
We're
dehumanizing.
we're we're, we're dehumanizing, depersonalized. We're anonymous,
Yeah, yeah,
which is when somebody's acting anonymously, they may do some things that they aren't really wanting to do or would be within their values, right?
and isn't that interesting that we get into that steel bubble, and for some reason we feel, like you said, we're I don't know, alone, and yet obviously not. We are interacting with everyone around us.
Right.
It may be in some ways a similar thing to how more of the younger generations, when they put on a set of headphones, they tune out what's around them in the world. It's this idea that I am now in my own little bubble, and the only person that I'm concerned about is me.
Me. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and it's not that it's just mom in a rush to get to school,
Right.
or it's not the slow car in front of you in your way, and it's making you frustrated, right?
Yeah.
There's other reasons, other things that involve that.
Right. And it always seems like we're in a hurry, we're running late, we're just feeling frustrated for some reason. It could be a billion things in any given day, right?
Right.
But that anonymity makes it really easy to lash out. And that's certainly true when we really are alone in the car. But I also know that sometimes it carries on when we're not alone in the car. Like, for example, we've got a friend or a spouse or children in the car. And if you don't think that they're paying attention to how we act and how we treat others on the road,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, they absolutely do.
Yep. They do pay attention.
Hmm.
So, what?
Sometimes repeating the things that we're not supposed to be
Yeah.
saying.
So, instead of honking or tailgating and zigzagging around trying to tempt somebody into moving, what if we flip that, and what if we treated driving as a daily spiritual practice?
Wait. Okay,
So,
I'm interested.
okay, so hear me out here. It's a way to exercise patience. You can breathe through your stress, even show kindness. Make it your closet. And in the New Testament, Christ is talking about going into your closet to pray, right?
Okay, yes.
Think of your car as your closet, that you're going to have a little spiritual, peaceful mindfulness.
Okay, okay. Interesting. Uh, so, of course, first thing I'm thinking of is when you say go into our closet. Truly, that was the metaphor that Christ used in that particular teaching. It's not that we're going
Right.
into some place that necessarily we can't see. The intent
Right.
there was that we're in a private location, and certainly our cars could be that, right? Okay,
Yeah.
so you mentioned before that you have developed some personal driving habits that have helped you to stay grounded. Would you share those with us?
Yeah. And in fact, I'm still working on these. So these aren't, my my everyday life. I'm perfecting myself as I apply these in my life.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right. Now stay tuned,
disclaimer.
folks, because there's a test at the end of this.
That's right. So
Oh, okay. No, no, just kidding. Just kidding. Okay.
so first, I try to avoid distractions. And again, my wife is kindly reminding me to put down the phone, leave it on the little holder, right?
Right.
Um, and also, I set the GPS and the music before I even start driving.
Okay.
Before I leave the driveway, I've got the GPS on, and I put the GPS on every time I drive. Okay.
Okay.
Even though I
Okay.
know where I'm going, there's a reason for that. It removes some of the stress out of my mind, and maybe it would for somebody else,
Interesting.
knowing that I have a prompt of where I'm going. So it takes that worry away of remembering where I go. Now, some people say, well, then you don't know where you're going and you just have to rely on it all the time. Well, yeah, but I've driven to work, 200 and some odd times a year, right?
Right. Right.
But I put the GPS on so that I don't have to worry about that one little thing. So, and then I avoid touching the phone or texting while
Okay.
driving.
Okay.
And if I'm feeling overwhelmed or anxious and I see a text come in, I pull over.
Oh, that's excellent.
I've taken the next exit, pulled over into a business parking lot, resolved whatever concern, and then got on my way.
Okay, that's
Maybe
great.
a
That's
5-minute delay, but that's what I do.
You know, right now, throughout the United States, the number one cause of car crashes, which, by the way, departments of transportation are trying to get us to stop using the word accident, which connotes that something outside of our control caused a crash. They are now trying to get us to use the word crash because 95% of the time it is something that's in our control, and it's called distracted driving. And that's not just a DWI or DUI scenario. It is more commonly we're messing with the radio, we're trying to reset the GPS, we're trying to take a phone call, or to, heaven forbid, text while you're driving, right? Which, in honesty, I have done it, but I have also repented of that and thought, okay, I am endangering myself and others around me, and that is not worth doing.
Right. And so that's part of the thing, is when you recognize that your life and the lives of others are at risk here. And that really hit home to me. And I think I mentioned this in one of our early episodes, that I was in an accident where I hit a girl on rollerblades.
Yeah, you did mention that.
It was a horribly traumatic event for me.
Of course it would be.
Even though she just had road rash and a broken leg, it was all the what ifs.
Right.
What if this? What if that? She would have been killed. She would have been maimed. She would have been, this cute, wonderful 15-year-old girl just was and I were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I got a ticket, but here's the thing. I wasn't distracted. I wasn't driving uncontrollably. I was very in control. And the situation was that it was just a bad situation. It was dusk. I couldn't see. I was turning. There's a lot of circumstances there. But the thing is I realize now, if I had been distracted, if I hadn't put on the brakes when I did, things could have been a lot worse.
Yeah.
And the trauma that you go through when you're in an accident isn't worth getting to work on time and making that extra rush or taking that text. That's not worth the trauma that you will feel even in a minor accident.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's I don't tailgate. In fact, okay, so here's one of the main keys of my method of driving safely.
Okay.
Is that I like to picture myself equal distance between the car in front of me and the car behind me.
Okay.
And I'm aware of the cars beside me.
Yes.
This takes paying attention to driving. You can't just, drive with blinders on, right? You gotta be looking in the mirrors, checking.
Yeah.
If you're balancing the distance between the car in front of you and the car behind you, you're not going to be tailgating. You're going to have extra space that if somebody ahead of you makes a quick decision or is distracted and wanders off, you have extra time to avoid an accident.
Right.
And to me, that's a lot more value. In fact, it happened to me this morning. While I was driving to Ogden, there's some construction up in the Roy area on I-15.
Okay.
5-lane freeway. Okay. It's busy time of day, early in the commute. I was in the right lane, and the far right lanes became an exit only lane. So this guy comes zipping up to me, tailgating me. And I'm going, I'm in the slow lane. I'm not going to go right. Well, he turns right, goes into the right lane, into the exit only lane.
Right.
And then as he's trying to get back over in front of me, cuts off another car in front of him.
Oh.
And in the meantime, I had slowed way down And the two of them were fighting and doing this little jockeying thing, and I was coasting back and staying clear of it. Now, would I have been in an accident? I don't know, but I
Right.
know I wasn't because I was paying attention to the situation.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
Well,
Well, and the idea of trying to stay equidistant from cars in front, behind, to the sides really sounds like a metaphor for balance, which is great. But we do, as you have just illustrated, we have to recognize that sometimes what the actions of other people around us are doing is not something that we have control over. So the only person we can control is ourselves.
right. And here's the thing is that um, it's hard to back off and say, I'm going to let them go. I'm
Yeah.
not going to challenge them.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
job isn't to fix them.
Right.
My
Right.
job is to stay safe. And if they're not going to be concerned about their safety, I'm going to be concerned about it.
Yeah. 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 And I might add that while I have heard that drivers in the south of part of the United States tend to be a little bit more um, cautious, careful.
Mm,
I will say that I think in any state of the union, doesn't matter whether you're in New York or California, it doesn't matter whether you're in Maine or Hawaii, there's always going to be people who are aggressive drivers. And sometimes you can see them in your rearview mirror as they're weaving in and out of traffic at a high rate of speed. Sometimes I call them a knife. If Anne's with me, I'll say knife, because that means that we're now both hyper aware of something that is happening in an aggressive, unusual way.
yeah.
But let's, if you don't mind, let's see if we can put some research to back this up, because there are certainly some well-established traits that lead to safer driving and better outcomes. So let's go through a few.
Yeah, sure thing. So I did some research. A lot of these are pulled from reports from insurance companies
Okay.
and Department of Transportations of individual states. So these are about a dozen things that are common threads through all of them.
Okay.
And they're not necessarily ranked, but I think you can pick out which ones are most important. First one, it says situational awareness. Always be scanning the mirrors, anticipate what's ahead,
Yep.
what's
Yep.
behind. Following distance, like I talked about, they say a 2-second rule. I think it should be more like 5 seconds.
Yeah. Well, and keep in mind that if the road conditions change, and it doesn't matter whether we're talking about rain, snow, dust, fog,
Yep.
whatever it is, then you definitely need to anticipate a greater distance.
Yeah, for sure. Practice defensive driving.
Mm-hmm.
When you're expecting mistakes on others, like I did this morning, not reacting emotionally.
There it is. There
Yep.
it is, right there. Yes.
And presume the other drivers are driving distracted.
Mm-hmm.
Because chances are they are being distracted, right? Now, okay, back up. I wasn't always a good driver, especially when I was 16 and 17.
Oh.
I got speeding tickets. I was in an accident, and I got this nice little letter from the state of Utah Department of Transportation saying I no longer had a driver's license because my
What?
points were too high.
Oh my goodness.
But I could repent, so
Uh-huh.
to speak, and go to the defensive driving class.
Okay.
Now I was 17. I thought, I know how to drive. Come on, what's the big deal?
Right. Right. Bulletproof. Teenagers think they're bulletproof.
And my dad looked at the letter, and then he looked at me, and he says, well, I'll make it easier. I'll take away your driver's license and your car insurance since I'm paying for it if you don't take this class.
Ah.
So all of a sudden it was like, oh,
Right.
I couldn't get my dad on my side. The state was after me, the insurance company was after me, and my dad agreed. But anyway, so that was one of the best things I did, was to take that defensive driving class. I learned some of these skills that I blatantly or purposely forgot from
Mm,
high
mm.
school driver's ed, right? All right, let's go on quickly here.
Okay.
So keep a positive attitude towards safety. When you get
Right.
behind the wheel, think safety first. I
Mm-hmm.
mean,
Mm-hmm.
I remember 15 years ago, I worked at an industrial place, and one guy was complaining about drivers and some issues that they'd had in the company. And he finally said, "Man, I wish OSHA would just take over the Department of Transportation."
Okay.
Uh, Whoa, OSHA is really strict on safety, right?
Yes, they are.
Training
Yes,
and
they are.
every
Yes.
so
Yes.
so everybody that drives a forklift has to be certified every few years,
Yes.
right? Department of Transportation, if you're driving a big rig, every year you have to qualify health wise and renew your license. So OSHA would be a great way to control driving safety. But let's try doing it ourselves first. Teach
Yeah.
some correct principles and let them direct themselves, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And so attitude towards safety. Let people in while merging, especially large vehicles. I have a personal rule. I do not change lanes in front of a truck, a big truck, semi. I do
Yeah.
not change
Okay.
lanes in front of the semi. And I've taught my kids that. You do not change lanes in front of a semi. Do not change lanes in front of a semi.
Okay.
In fact, I slow down and let them in. When they're trying to get their blinker on, I will slow traffic down and blink my lights so they can move over. All right, let's go on.
Nice.
Avoiding distractions. Put down
Mhm.
the phone. Eyes
Yeah,
up.
we talked about
Eyes
that
up. Thumbs up.
a bit. Yep. Yep.
You got
Absolutely.
look at this.
Yeah. Eyes up, brain
If you've
engaged.
got your hands at 10 and 2, like you should, your thumbs should be up, right?
Two.
Eyes up, thumbs up.
Okay.
Ask passengers to keep a low
No,
volume.
wait. So do you do that? I mean, the 10 and 2, or are you,
Yes.
like this?
I'm waving to people. Hey. No, no, most of the time if I'm resting and I'm on the freeway, I'm at 10 and 2 with my thumbs up.
Okay.
Here's the thing, if you grip the wheel like this, you're in less control than if you're like this.
Oh,
There's studies to show
interesting.
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Okay. Next.
Let's see. Follow rules.
Mm-hmm.
Keep your speed moderate with traffic.
Okay.
Now the law says speed limit.
Right.
I say moderate with the traffic.
Yeah.
That's more important than the speed, because that
Well,
applies.
yeah, it is important. I actually got pulled over by the Utah Highway Patrol a number of years ago because I was impeding traffic, and I was in the slow lane, and I was doing exactly the speed limit. And he pulled me over because I was actually impeding traffic and therefore causing a hazard driving situation.
Wow.
I know, isn't that interesting? And it was a valuable lesson to me. And it's like he said, look, you just go with the flow of traffic, because then everything and everyone is in a safer frame of mind.
Yeah,
And again, that doesn't mean that we're doing 80 in a 60-mile-an-hour zone, right? I mean,
right.
that's ridiculous. Or 40 in a school zone, ridiculous. But again, the idea that we're going to be moderate with the flow of traffic. We don't need to be in that fast lane doing 10 or 15 or 20 miles over the speed limit. We also don't need to be in the slow lane kind of holding everybody back.
Or the fast lane holding everybody back.
Yeah, especially. Yeah. Okay. Let's also talk just really quickly about the idea of driving when you're tired. And I don't know about you, Randy, but as I have aged and hopefully gracefully aged, I have noticed that my body doesn't handle long road trips like I used to when I was, my 20s, my 30s, even in the 40s. At this point, I really struggle with driving in a car more than about 3 hours straight. And at that point, I am really getting uncomfortable. And so I need to pull over, get out of the car, stretch my legs, stretch my back, maybe move my neck around, that kind of a thing, get a
Yep.
drink of water, use, other services. Um, and so I think that one of the things we're all well aware that any sort of alcohol consumption limits our ability to process quickly enough. It slows down our reaction time. And so you see signs that, that buzzed driving is a DUI, driving under the influence or driving while intoxicated, But tired driving is also equivalent to that, driving in a buzzed state. You're not completely aware of your whole scenario. And honestly, again, I have been pulled over because I was driving tired, and it was on a long trip at night. And I got pulled over, and believe me, I thanked the officer for pulling me over and helping me to recognize that I was driving while I was sleepy, not sleeping, but sleepy.
Yeah. Right.
And I didn't get a ticket, but I took a few minutes, and I know that we were close to home at that point. I mean, we were like 20, 30 minutes away from arriving at home from a long trip. And that was enough to help me become alert and be able to complete the journey safely. But it could have very easily been something much, much more dire.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And I've noticed that myself too, it's harder to go, I used to be able to take the family on vacation and drive 10 hours straight.
Right. Yeah.
Now I can't go more than 6, or sometimes if it's been a long day and I get on the road, it's really tough.
Yeah.
And, I like to take stops. I like to take stops at a rest stop, and
Yeah.
I'll buy a soda out of the machine and stretch my legs. If more people would do that, would have lesser accidents for.
Yeah, for sure. For
Right.
sure. Yeah, because we decompress when we do that, right? When we get out of the car, stretch our legs, stretch our backs, we decompress, both physically and literally, as well as figuratively. Before we get to the last one, let me ask you a question, Randy, because I think this is definitely important to discuss here. And that is, what about listening to books on Audible, or listen, and for that matter, even listening to music or listening to talk radio while you're driving? What do you think?
I think that you need to recognize your own capabilities while you're listening to music or podcast. Excuse me. There are some cases where music will make you more relaxed, maybe a little sleepy.
Yeah.
There's other times it helps you, pick up and be alert.
Right.
I do find
Sometimes music can help you to actually drive aggressively, and I think you have to be wise in using the right kind of music.
Yeah, so it can also happen with podcasts or talk radio. It's certainly not this podcast. We
hope not.
we encourage you to drive safely whenever you're listening to us while you're driving. And I have had people tell me that they have listened to us while driving.
That's funny.
But you're right, and I think the last things on our safety list is some practical things.
Okay.
Use your safety equipment.
Yes.
Your seatbelts. Your
Yes.
lane assist if your car has one. Cruise control if you are alert. And the same thing with lane assist. I had a rental car for a few months that had lane assist on it, and I kind of got lazy because it would nudge me over in the lane. And when I was done, turned in the rental and had my car back, it didn't have the lane assist. I'm going, what's going on? So, those are some things that you got to look at for your own abilities. And of course, the final thing is emotional regulation.
Yes.
And I think that's when having a mindfulness
Yes.
time, take it into a spiritual sense while you're driving can really help.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. And we talked a little bit earlier about, the idea of, you're alone. It can be a place of reflection. I mean, again, you need to be focused and aware and not distracted, right? It doesn't matter what may be the thing that's distracting you. It could be stress on the job. It could be stress with a family situation and you're distracted. But the point being is that we can allow the drive to be, again, an emotionally an emotional release, if you will. In other words, it's something that needs our attention, and we can let other things go. And in the process of doing that, we can kind of take a breath. We can kind of relax. By the way, I'll tell you that flying an airplane was the same way for me. When I got into the airplane, my focus was flying the airplane, safe procedures, every single step of the way, which includes walk around inspections before you get in the airplane. You have to go through a checklist of things that you absolutely monitor every step, every little action before you ever leave the ground. When you're up in the air, you're constantly communicating your position and your intention. We don't do that in a car.
Yeah.
But the point being is that, you might think, well, he's so busy that how could you do anything else? And the answer is that's exactly why it was something that helped me to decompress and to recenter, is that because that demanded my whole focus, my whole attention. And when I would come down, I would often feel more capable of handling something tough, whether it was a scenario with my family or a scenario with my work, right? It was something that helped me to recenter and to be able to see more clearly what and where I needed to go. So I love those driving tips, and let's remind everyone that those aren't just driving tips; they're life tips. So each one is an exercise in self-awareness and self-control. And let me just share real fast, because I know we're needing to wrap up. But I mentioned at the beginning that my wife really helped me to calm down as a driver. And one of the things that she would do is every time that we saw somebody else being erratic or aggressive, she would say, well, maybe he is taking his wife to the emergency room to have their baby.
Right.
It's like, oh,
yeah.
Or maybe that person is transporting a wedding cake and being extra careful.
Yeah.
Right. And those were the two that I always remembered the most. But she would have these observations. Hey, relax. They're not trying to get you. Right. There's not a vendetta. There's not a malevolence in the way that they drive to tick you off. So just let it go.
Yeah.
And I still practice, but by and large, that has made an enormous improvement. And unless I have watched a flying movie or a sports movie where I get pumped up, I'm a much better driver.
Yeah, there's some rock and roll songs that would probably motivate me to drive faster erratically.
Right.
So I try to avoid those.
Right. But it's a nice thing to think about how, even in our commute each day, that the car can be a classroom. And if we're mindful and aware, and we remember that we have this opportunity to be kind, to be patient, then that sets a tone for how we can act through the rest of our day or the rest of the evening, which, believe me, that's important too, to be able to come home from a day of maybe stressful work and allow all of that to kind of come off of you as part of the commute. You get home and now you are ready to be nurturing and supportive and calm and loving.
Right. And so each red light, each time that you have a slow driver in front of you,
Mm-hmm.
time that you're in a situation that's maybe a little difficult or frustrating, just back off. Take an opportunity to live your values, take a breath, and think about really what's important.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said earlier, it's not as important as you may think to get to work on time if you're endangering somebody else's life or your own life. It's just not worth it.
Yeah. And, I was driving late to a meeting, and a car cuts me off, right? And I wanted to honk, I wanted to grumble and, say bad words.
And switch from missiles to guns.
That's right. But I thought, getting there on time isn't worth the stress of having that kind of an event. So I backed off. I took a breath here, and I got to work got to the meeting a couple minutes late, but I was centered and ready for the meeting. I didn't step into the meeting just all mad.
All riled up. Yeah, exactly. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. All right, friends. Here's our Centered Live challenge for the week. Next time you're in the car, drive with patience. So practice driving with patience. Let someone merge in front of you. Drive the reasonable speed limit. And again, reasonable is a key word there. Even when others are not, it doesn't mean that you need to regulate them. Just let them do what they want to do. It's your job to resist reacting when someone is driving poorly, and make sure that you you breathe, right? Keep breathing and yeah, there's that.
Yeah, maybe you ought to use that.
Don't close your eyes. Don't close your eyes.
I was just thinking that's an icon everybody uses for praying, right? Well, we should use it for centered. We're being centered here.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
All right. Well, driving doesn't have to be a race or a battlefield. It can be a retreat, right? A place where you reset and refocus and
bring the joy of driving back, right?
Yeah, that's right. And listening to Centered.Live while you drive. There you go.
Be careful.
So, thanks for listening. If this sparked something for you, just share it with a friend, leave a review, let us know what helps you to stay centered behind the wheel. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you might see our videos. That helps us out a lot. So,
yeah, absolutely. And we'll see you next time on Centered Live. Until then, stay aware, stay kind, and of course, stay centered. Next week, we're going to be talking about fly hard.
Why what?
Fly hard.
Why hard?
Yeah.
Why hard?
Why hard?
Okay, great. We'll look forward to why are things hard, right?
Exactly.
Okay, great. Thanks, folks. We'll